Cycle of EJB 2.1 entity bean with container managed persistence in Jakarta enterprise bean, so EJB. EJB 2.1 entity bean with container managed persistence. An entity bean is an EJB 2.1 enterprise bean component that manages persistent data, performs complex business logic, potentially uses several dependent Java objects, and can be uniquely identified by a primary key. This figure shows the EJB 2.1 CMP entity bean life cycle. There are three states: does not exist, pooled, and ready. To transition from does not exist state to the pooled state, the following occurs. New instant method is invoked and the set entity context method is invoked with the entity context argument, while the pool state EJB home, EJB find, and EJB select methods may be invoked. To transition from the pool state to the ready state, following occurs for a new instance. The EJB create method is invoked and the EJB post create method is invoked, while in the ready state, the following state to the pooled following methods may be invoked: EJB load, business methods, EJB timeout, EJB select, and EJB store. To transition from the ready method to the pooled state, the container select the entity bean as eligible for passivation and then invokes the EJB passivate method. To transition from the pooled state to the ready state, the following occurs for the previously passivated entity bean. The EJB activate method is invoked. The transition from the ready state to the pooled the following occurs for a removed entity bean. The EJB removed method is invoked. To transition from the pooled state to the does not exist state, unset entity context method is invoked. The EJB 2.1 enterprise beans lifecycle methods, as specified in the javax.ejb entity bean interface, that an entity bean with container managed persistent must implement. For EJB 2.1 entity beans with container managed persistence, you must at least provide an empty implementation for all callback methods. uh, EJB create method, you must implement an EJB create method corresponding to each create method declared in the home interface. When the client invokes the create method, the container first invokes the constructor to instantiate the object, then it invokes the corresponding EJB create method. For an entity bean with container manage persistent, use this method to initialize container manage persistent fields. The return type of all EJB create methods is the type of the bean's primary key. Optionally, you can initialize the bean with the unique primary key and return it. If you rely on container to create and initialize the primary key, return null. EJB post create, the container invokes this method after the environment is set. For each EJB create method, the EJB post create method must exist with this argument. For an entity bean with container manage persistent, you can leave this implementation empty or use your implementation to initialize parameters within or from entity context. EJB remove method, the container invokes this method before it ends the life cycle of the entity bean. For an entity bean with container manage persistent, you can leave this implementation empty or use your implementation to perform any required cleanup, for example, closing external resources such as field handles. EJB store method. This container invokes this method right before the transaction commits. It saves the persistent data to an outside resource such as database. For an entity bean with container manage persistent, you can leave this implementation empty. EJB load method. This container invokes this method. The container invokes this method when the data should be reinitialized from the database. This normally occurs after activation of an entity bean. For an entity bean with container manage persistent, you can leave this implementation empty. EJB activate, the container calls this method directly before it activates an object that was previously passivated. Perform any necessary reacquisition of resources in this method. EJB passivate, the container calls this method before it passivates the object. Release any resources that can be easily recreated in EJB activate and save storage space. Typically, you want to release resources that cannot be passivated, such as sockets or database connections. Retrieve these resources in the EJB activate method. Here, does not exist interacts with pooled new instance, then set entity context are passed from does not exist to pool. EJB home is passed from pool to pool, and EJB find then EJB select are passed from pool to pool. Pooled interacts with ready. EJB create, then EJB post create are passed from pool to ready. EJB loads are passed from ready to ready. Business methods are passed from ready to ready. EJB timeout are passed from ready to ready. EJB select is passed from ready to ready. EJB store is passed from ready to ready. EJB activate is passed from pool to ready. EJB passivate is passed from ready to pull. EJB removed is passed from ready to pull. Unset entity context is passed from pull to does not exist. Here you can see a life cycle of a message driven beam. Now this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching it.